Good evening. My name is Stephen Leskin, and tonight's topic in Oregon Divorce School is all about spousal support. We have a great attendance tonight, and I'm happy to see that. As usual, I'm not going to take questions. People are free to call me. I'll have my contact information at the end. You're free to email me or give me a call. Tell me that you saw the seminar or webinar, and I'll be happy to take your question. I just get distracted when there's questions, and I lose my train of thought and I go amok. So I've just discovered it's better for me just to hold off on questions. But again, I really am happy to take questions. These seminars, webinars are intended as a really focused hour on a topic that's important to people who are going through divorce. And this is a deep dive into a topic, and I try to provide people with objective analysis and about the law and how things work in the courts, on the belief that people will get better outcomes if they understand the law. It will reduce stress, it will reduce anxiety if you have a firm grasp of what the law is. And I've seen that in my mediation practice, particularly, that once both parties understand what the law is, it's easier to make decisions because everybody's on the same page. And people have by explaining the law, people have a better sense of what is fair. And so, uh, um, at least during my mediations, once I go through that, um, people have a better grasp of what's happening and can usually come to an agreement on their own. In any event, tonight's topic is spousal support. Here's the agenda. I will introduce myself, give you some background, and then I'll introduce the topic, go over some basics. We'll talk about where the authority to award spousal support resides within the Oregon Revised Statutes, the ORS. And it is one particular statute and we'll cover that. We'll also then go into some depth in the three types of spousal support, why they're different, what it takes to prove a claim um, for spousal support, and conversely, how to defeat a claim. And then lastly, we'll talk about once spousal support is awarded, how to modify that based on a change of circumstance. So it should be an exciting night, and get your popcorn out and let's get started. So, my name is Stephen Leskin. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing in Portland since September 20th at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I've been doing family law for more than 25 years. Um, my website is at www.leskinlaw.com. I can be reached at Stephen Leskin at Leskin Law. And of course, I am free to, please feel free to give me a call if you want to discuss like spousal support. Just tell me that you saw um, the webinar. I'd be happy to talk to you. All right, so let's get into it. So why spousal support? So let's like pretend that we're living in the 1950s and we're living in a very, traditional um, family structure where dad's gone off to work all day, and dad's built up his income and his earning potential, and mom's been stay at home and raising the kids. And out of the, maybe she never went to college. She's been a stay at home mom. That describes my family growing up. Uh, and so the family, after a couple of years, the parents drift apart or whatever happens, and there's a divorce. Uh, Mom has no, in those circumstances, mom has no access to income. And so the point of spousal support is and so you can think about like what condition mom will be in once she leaves the marriage, right? Her situation is going to be desperate. And so spousal support um, compensates or makes an adjustment for that in the future, so that the spouse who didn't work um, has recourse to a reasonably comfortable life, not disproportionately uh, different from what the life that that person was living while they were married. Spousal support is a negotiated amount. The two factors in spousal support are one, the amount of the award and the duration, and those are both either negotiated between the parties or imposed by the court. The difference between spousal support and child support, and this is important to understand, is that while spousal support is negotiated or awarded by the court, child support is set by statute. You can go to the Oregon Department of Justice website and put in mom's numbers and dad's numbers and how many overnights there are and uh, health insurance and childcare and union benefits, and you put all those inputs in, and the statute will give back a number via a child support calculator. But it's set by statute with very high standards for um, uh, deviating from that. In court, you'd have to really convince the court that there should be a deviation in child support. Another difference is that a parent, a spouse, does not have a right to spousal support. It's not automatic. Child support's automatic. If there's a child, there is going to be child support, right? So those are the two key differences between spousal support and um, child support. Uh, Down a little bit, I don't think it's on this slide. So yeah, it is number five. So unlike child support, uh, spousal support must be uh, pled in the petition or in the response that a spouse is entitled to receive it, or is petitioning the court for an award of spousal support. Uh, you also have to put child support into the petition, but it's not fatal to a claim for child support if it's omitted, right? The court is still obligated to award child support. So, uh, spouse support, you have to prove that you have the right to it, and the court will award it. Uh, Child support, every child has a right to be supported, and both parents are obligated to support a child. Spousal support can be awarded to both, or actually, I should say either. Spousal support can be awarded to either husband or wife. Um, just given economic realities, it's more common for the husband to pay spousal support, but that has certainly changed. And I've seen the change over the course of my career. Um, Probably a quarter of the time that I have a spousal support claim, it involves the husband receiving spousal support. And the husband will have to prove the same exact things that the wife would have had to have approved. I recently finished a case where wife was a big earner and husband was on disability, and the parties agreed that the wife would pay spousal support, but um, that was just an example of uh, wife paying, uh, and I think there also used to be some stigma about a man receiving money from a woman, and that's certainly no longer the case. So spousal support can be awarded to either husband or wife. As I intimated just a moment ago, the two factors that the two factors that constitute spousal support are amount and duration. And so what I'm about to say now is very important to understand. Amount, and I'll come back to this later, but amount is a function of two things. The absolute dollar amount between the parties' incomes and the percentage amount. So um, if there is a great disparity, like say you have a disparity of uh, um, mom makes nothing and dad makes, $3,000 a month. Uh, uh, so that disparity is going to form the basis of how much uh, spouse support mom will receive. The absolute dollar amount will actually determine how much that is. So, uh, dad who earns 12 or $15,000 a month is obviously going to be paying more than, or at least I hope it's obvious, will be paying more than the dad, husband who is earning $3,000 a month. So if uh, let's just change it up a little bit. If dad is earning 3,000 and mom is earning 2,000, and there's a difference of $1,000 a month, that's going to be a lesser amount for mom. And so in the same example, if dad's still making 15,000 and mom is making two, uh, that's going to be more than the spousal support will be more than the situation where mom is making 12,000 and dad is making 15,000, right? In that circumstance, mom may or wife may or may not receive spousal support because she already has a comfortable living and a way of supporting herself. Uh, but the point is that the dollar amount will be a function of both the percentage difference of the two incomes and the actual dollar amount. So uh, usually, spout the percentage difference in amounts uh, usually um, it varies a lot between counties and even between judges. But just for our purposes, just for to have something to talk about tonight, we can safely say that that percentage difference, uh, so between uh, uh, dad's income, husband's income, and wife's income, uh, that difference, the amount of spousal support will usually run between 10% and 35%, depending on the circumstances, and we'll cover that later. So just as a way of thinking about that, uh, uh, the resulting difference between the two incomes, 10 to 20 to 35% is probably going to be an amount of spousal support that a court would award. In terms of duration, the standard kind of cliche that attorneys give is that spousal support, the duration of spousal support is 50% of the marriage. I think that's too high. I think generally the courts will award about a third. Uh, but if it's a very short marriage, a year, 2 years, it's unlikely that there will be an award of spousal support. So, a 2 year marriage or 1 year marriage, um, court's not likely to award um, any spousal support. Uh, on the flip side, supposing there's a 20-year marriage, right? The parties married when they're 30s, now in their 40s, now in their 50s, uh, maybe 60s. The court may award, and mom's mom doesn't work, or mom is disabled, or mom has never worked. Um, in these circumstances, uh, and I'm using mom and wife synonymously, even though that's not really good. But a wife in those circumstances may have the potential to receive an indefinite award. Indefinite meaning permanent, right? Until the end of time. Well, until the spousal support ends. In very, very long marriages, uh, 20 year, 15, 20, 25 years, uh, mom wife may have the opportunity to receive an indefinite award of spouse support. Also, I would say that it's important to know when a spousal support award will terminate. The termination date is negotiated, right? So a couple could negotiate that the duration of spousal support is going to be 10 years. Um, and there's some possibility, and we'll discuss this at the end about modifying that so it either continues or lessens. But in any event, spousal support will always end on the death of the payor or the recipient. And if there's arrearages, supposing there's years of unpaid spousal support, the recipient can go after the payor's estate to make them whole. So if there's a house an equity or bank accounts or something like that, and there's $20,000 in unpaid spousal support, the recipient can go after that after death. And I will come into enforcement of spousal support towards the end. But just to round out the discussion about duration, duration will uh, by uh, duration will terminate on either the death of the recipient or the payor. Uh, as we talked about at the top, spousal support must be requested. If the person petitioning the court for the divorce fails to include a claim, right, fails to include a allegation that they are entitled to receive spousal support, or asking or petitioning the court to award spousal support, uh, if they fail to include that, then they will not be that will not be awarded by the court. The recipient of the petition, the respondent, the person who's being handed the divorce papers, they have a chance to counterclaim their own petition to the court for spousal support. And same thing, if they neglect to include their uh, request from the court for spousal support, they also will not be awarded spousal support. It must be a requested item um, uh, during the divorce. Spousal support can be tapered up or it can be tapered down. And usually, like in, for example, transitional support, uh, the support award, the amount is tapered down. So somebody needs, go back to school. The uh, wife needs to go back to school. She's been out of the job market. She's been home taking kids, and she needs to go back to school to bring her credentials current. Um, so she will have greater financial expenses at the beginning than later on. And, maybe she's going to go out and start working. So spousal support can certainly be tapered down and it can be tapered up. Uh, I can't think of a, uh, I can't think of a good circumstance where it would be tapered up, but the parties certainly can negotiate that. Spousal support can also be paid as a lump sum, uh, uh, as a uh, sometimes parties will agree that it's just better to pay the award as a lump sum, and that's certainly possible. Sometimes parties will say, in lieu of your equity in the house, I will agree to pay spouse support. I don't think that's the optimal way to handle a situation like that, but parties can certainly negotiate that. Um, uh, but spousal support can be awarded in lieu of property. Uh, and then lastly, the last basic thing to know is that spousal support is an insurable interest. You can insist that a spousal support payor have life insurance to cover their obligation to pay spousal support um, for the duration of the support award. And that's not uncommon. And then the payor who is paying the spousal support will need to go out and buy usually it's going to be a term policy that will cover, accidental death and illness and injury and uh, in an amount that's agreed by the parties or imposed by the court, and naming the recipient as the beneficiary, and then the recipient has the right to review it has the right to review the policy from the company to ensure that they are, in fact, that there is insurance in the appropriate amount and that they are the named beneficiary. So just something to think about in terms of um, protecting an interest that's going to occur and pay out over time. Okay, so ORS, I did this wrong. It's ORS 107 105 is the site to find a spousal support award. And that section of the revised statute, of the Oregon revised statute, uh, says that there are three types, or makes provisions for three types of spousal support: transitional, maintenance, and compensatory. So I'm going to give an overview now, and then we're going to dive into each of these in just a moment, and we'll look closely at the statute. Transitional support helps a spouse uh, improve their skills so that they can make a living wage or a better living wage. And so it's monetary support for a spouse who needs to go back to school or get career training or burnish their credentials. And transitional support is intended to do that. So if somebody has a mechanical background, mechanical engineer, and it's been years since they've uh, practiced their profession or put to use their education, transitional support will help them, uh, is provided as support to help them get to a better economic place in life. So it's transitional. Maintenance support is the opposite. Maintenance support is intended so that a party following divorce will not live a disproportionately better or worse uh, lifestyle than during the marriage. So maintenance is intended so that a person will not suffer a huge decline in lifestyle following a divorce. And like we talked about, like at the beginning, think of, the old family where mom, stayed home for years and years and years. And then it's, 30, 40 years later, there's husband's been, successful in his career or just, making, reasonable money and they get divorced. If there was no spouse support, mom may face the prospect of living in poverty and maintenance support ameliorates against that. Compensatory support is a little different. Compensatory support rewards one spouse for their um, contributions to the other spouse's earning capacity, right? So the typical compensatory award would be uh, mom worked during father's medical school. Father goes to medical school. Dad goes to medical school. Husband, let me get this right. Husband goes to medical school, and mom works. It supports the family for years. Through the uh, college, and then through medical school, then through residency, and then dad says, "I met a nice nurse. Goodbye. Good luck. It's been nice." Uh, and my wife has bought into husband's career at that point. She has bought into his future earning capacity through her contributions to his schooling, and that's what compensatory support addresses. By far, just by far, compensatory support is the least awarded from what I see in Oregon. Compensatory awards just do not come about that often in those circumstances where somebody has like that deeply built contributed to someone else's earning capacity. It just doesn't happen that often. I would add one more type of uh, it's not spousal support, but um, a lot of times, like somebody will buy out like the equity in a home, and there will be an equalizing award. Sometimes those are paid over time. So it's those are compensation for uh, equity in the assets. So it's not spousal support, it's compensation for the contributions that somebody made to the assets, but it's still a payment stream, right? So supposing the equity in a house is $500,000, and each party is going to come away with 250. But say one of the parties says, um, "I can go to the bank and get this money, or I can just pay you, um, uh, something every month." That's also an income stream, but it's an income stream coming out of equity. So it's not spousal support, it's compensation, but it's still an income stream that might come out of the marital um, estate. And just incidentally, that would also be an insured interest or an insurable interest. Okay, so now uh, we are going to do a deep dive into uh, maintenance and transitional and compensatory support. And we are going to start with transitional support. So this is the language from the statute. This is from 107, 105. And I'm just going to read this. It's not hard to understand. Um, and it says transitional spousal support as needed for party to attain education or training necessary to allow the party to prepare for reentry into the job market or for advancement therein. Okay, so we covered that earlier. Like that's what I said earlier. The factors to be considered, and we haven't covered this, by the court in awarding transitional support include, but are not limited to, the length of the marriage, a party's training and employment skills, a party's work experience, the financial needs and resources of each party, the tax consequences to each party, a party's custodial or child support responsibilities, and then finally, any other factor that the court deems just and equitable. So that says that the court has discretion to award anything that's reasonable, essentially. So the couple of key points to point out, and things that are going to come up again and again, is the duration of the marriage. The duration of the marriage, like we discussed, will determine the duration of the spousal support award. Since this is transitional support, clearly a party's training and employment skills and work experience um, should be considered in awarding spousal support. The financial needs and resources of each party should also, will also help the court determine how much should be rewarded. Tax consequences, it's in the statute, but is no longer a factor. Uh, it used to be the case that the payor could deduct spousal support from their income, and the spousal support award would be considered taxable income, and taxes would have to be paid on that. Under Trump 1, um, those the tax requirements were removed from the spouse support um, equation. So tax consequences are no longer a consideration when awarding or deciding to receive um, spouse support. All right, so that's all about transitional support. Maintenance support. So I'm going to read this and we'll see how close I got it when I explained it earlier. Spousal maintenance as a contribution by one spouse to the support of the other for either a specified or an indefinite period, right? So is a contribution by one spouse to the support or the support or the for either a specified or indefinite period. The factors to be considered are the duration of the marriage, the age of the parties, the health of the parties, including physical, mental, and emotional condition, the standard of living established during the marriage, and then the relative income and earning capacity of the parties, recognizing that the wage earner's continuing income may be the basis for support, distinct from the income that the support spouse may receive from the distribution of marital property. Right. So that last one is saying that um, uh, spouse support is based on income of the parties, not the size of the estate. Right? So there may be a distribution of assets, but that does not undermine a party's claim for support. That if somebody is transferring income producing property, that that may then satisfy the spousal support award, uh, but that's generally not the case. But so equity from a house, divided equity from the house, is a separate item from spouse support. And then again, um, the court will want it. So the other thing I just want to point out here is that the standard of living established during the marriage, that's the key to understanding maintenance support, right? Is that the recipient is not going to be disproportionately um, disadvantaged by virtue of the divorce. If the couple, are big earners and there's a lot of money, um, uh, he or she is going to have a more comfortable life than people who aren't making as much. But the point is that in either circumstance, it will be proportionate or not unduly proportionate to the income during the marriage, right? So the standard of living established during the marriage is very important. And then the court can also look at a party's training and employment skills, a party's work experience, the financial needs and resources of each party, right? So the court is required to say, all right, husband, if you're going to be paying spouse support, I need to know how much you are making every month, and wife, in these circumstances, we need to know how much income you have each month, so that we can do that, figuring what that difference of income uh, is. Again, tax consequences to each party is not relevant. It's no longer important. Whether or not a party has custodial or child support responsibilities. And again, lastly, any factors that the court deems just and equitable. So the court is not really bound to this list, but these are what the legislature is saying to the courts. These are the factors that you should be considering in making a spousal support award. Child support responsibilities may also factor into uh, a spousal support. If there are children and there is also a claim for a spousal support, there's only so much money to go around, right? Obviously, money is not infinite for most people. And the child support award, which we talked about at the top, is a mandatory payment, right? It's not optional. The court can figure out how much um, child support will be paid and then adjust the spousal support award accordingly. So the court may have in its mind, for example, to pay the couple, the mom, the wife, $2,500 a month. Like that's in the court's mind. That's what a fair number is, and the child support award is $600. So um, the what is 2,506. So the court may then award 1,900 from in as an amount of spousal support from husband to wife. So the amount of the child support does factor into um, the amount of spousal support. And in the judgment, in the final judgment that dictates the parties' relationship, uh, there may be very specific um, findings about that, so that if the children age out, how much will the spouse award increase or decrease, uh, or um, you know other factors that so it's delineated what is what, and so later on, if the court is going to return to a judgment, it will know what money is going for what purpose. So again, now we're at the last type of spouse support, compensatory support, and I will read the statute and then walk through the criteria. So compensatory spouse support, where there has been a significant financial or other contribution by one party to the education, training, vocational skills, career, or earning capacity of the other party, and when an order for compensatory spouse support is otherwise just and equitable in all of the circumstances. So just and equitable uh, is the standard that the legislature is giving to the courts. And the reason that it's just so, and this is the first time that the just and equitable language has shown up. There's no just and equitable standard in maintenance or transitional support. And I suspect that the reason that this is here is that this is really dividing up property, right? The income stream is an asset that the wife, or I'm just going to continue with the gender roles, that the wife has bought into over years, and so the court's required to apply a just and equitable. in all of the circumstances, right? So it's not just, um, you know, like what the family dynamic is in terms of like lifestyle or um, um, comfort during the marriage. It's all of the circumstances. Like what was wife's contribution to husband's present income stream? Uh, I didn't say this before, but occasionally there will be a couple that have enjoyed self-employment, and it's husband's business, right? Wife doesn't have any interest in it. The court can still divide the equity in the business. Supposing the business is worth, $1 million, wife has a $500,000 interest in that, very, very loosely speaking. But she may also have um, some claim to the husband's income resulting from that business, uh, independent of her um, right to half of the equity, right? So that's what the just and equitable is saying here. That she has both a uh, equitable right to the half the value of the presumably half the value of the asset, and uh, an interest in the income stream for her contributions. I actually should qualify it for her significant contributions to the growth of the business. And so that is actually the first criteria here: the amount, duration, and nature of the contribution. So that's the in all the circumstances. What was the wife's contribution? Maybe um, maybe wife was doing the books. Maybe she was staying at home, taking care of all of the administrative things about the business while she was raising the kids. So the court can look at that over time to figure out, okay, so, or maybe wife was the salesperson and had a real knack for selling the product, and she, could say, well, I grew the business over years by 83%, right? And so, in a case like that, wife can quantify. We started at zero, and now we're doing $1 million a year. And I was the salesperson the whole time, while taking care of the kids. So, like, the court will look at that in all the circumstances, the amount, duration, and nature of the contribution. So, the court's required to how much, how long, and what was it? And then here again, we see the duration of the marriage, the relative earning capacity of the parties, uh, the extent to which the marital estate is already benefited from the contribution. So this is a little confusing, but it's referring to um, how much the wife has already received from the benefits. Again, and then again, there's tax consequences to each party and any other factors the court deems just and equitable. All right. Uh, Now we're going to talk about how to make a spousal support claim with the court or defeat a spousal support claim. All right. So this could speak to either spouse. This could be husband or wife. Um, But the first question that you're going to ask is, what's the goal of the sport? Is it maintenance, a longer marriage, and somebody who hasn't had an ability to work or doesn't have the ability to work? It could be a person who's disabled, it could be a person who's with bad health, it could be a person who's just never worked, or is it transitional, more appropriate for a shorter marriage? And so that's the first question is what type of spousal support are you going to ask the court to give you? And I would also add that sometimes courts will award transitional and maintenance. And that's not unheard of. So to make the claim, you need to be able to address each of the criteria that we just finished discussing and bring in objective evidence for those criteria. Uh, so, for example, if uh, the claim is that wife needs to go back to school. You come in with a resume showing this is wife's work history, or a Social Security earnings report from wife showing wife hasn't worked. Some objective uh, um, basis for saying this is uh, how we're satisfying this criteria. You will need to document and confirm both parties' income, document and support a budget for transitional or maintenance support. If it's maintenance support, you need to know, what rent is or what a new mortgage is. What are the utilities? What's it going to cost mom or the recipient to stay alive? If it's transitional support, you need a plan. Mom's going to go back to school and become an occupational therapist, and it will pay this much money when she graduates, and 5 years down the line, it will pay this much money. But now, books and tuition and room and board are going to cost this, and here's the objective evidence to support that. Um, so you're going to want to bring in that kind of evidence to support a transitional award. Um, for maintenance, um, you're going to need to show that, uh, mom, the recipient is unable to work or um, it doesn't have the capacity to be self-sufficient, and um, that will form the basis for a spouse support award. To advocate against a spousal support award, you need to document claimant's past earnings, right? You want to make sure that there's some objective showing about how much the spouse earned or their potential earning capacity. So, let's just switch it up a little bit. Mom is on the hook. Mom is the earner, and she wants to show that wife is the earner, and she wants to show that uh, husband isn't entitled to a big spouse award. Uh, she can come into court and say, "It's um, uh, husband hasn't worked in years, but husband has a PhD in nuclear physics, right? Or finance. Let's say finance. Husband has a PhD in finance, and if he went out and found a job, he could find a job at earning $300,000 a year, right? So, husband has the potential to make this kind of money. And that's one way that you would help defeat a claim for spouse support by having an objective basis for showing that if they went out and worked, this is what they could be earning. Uh, if if you are going to be the payor, you want to show like why your salary is insufficient. Maybe you're supporting your parents. Maybe you're supporting um, uh, a child that is sick, or or something along those lines, uh, or that you're paying. The judgment is requiring you to pay a large amount of the debt, so you're trading debt for spousal support, right? So and because of that, you don't have the sufficient salary to pay um, uh, a large spouse support award. Uh, you also going to want to look at are there factors which prevent the payor from working full time or from working? And then finally, are you close to retirement or you have other significant obligations uh, that prevent you from paying uh, a 20 or 30% difference of income award, right? So those are all like bases for defeating a claim of spousal support. Next, we're going to talk about modification. So, uh, if there is no award of spousal support at the time of the judgment, right? Both parties are working, they're making about the same, and the court signs off on no spousal support. Neither party can come back later and ask the court to award spousal support. Spousal support must be in the judgment to begin with. Uh, if it is in the judgment, uh, unless the parties agree or the court awards irrevocable, unmodifiable award, spousal support can be modified. And so it is possible to award, I misspoke, it is possible to modify a spousal support award. And this can happen on a significant change of circumstance. So you have to come to court and say, um, I was making, I'm a surgeon, and I was making $400,000 a year, but I was in a car accident and I lost my dominant arm. And now I'm making, $30,000 a year tutoring medical students. That changes, that's obviously, kind of bogus scenario, uh, but that's the kind of change of circumstance that the court will look at. It doesn't have to be that dramatic, but a significant change of circumstance uh, will give the court a basis for modifying a spousal support award. Things that do constitute a change of circumstance are retirement, if it's not contemplated at the time of the judgment, right? If you're um, signing a divorce decree, a year before retirement, that may not because that's an anticipated event. If there's 12 years of um, spousal support and retirement is in cards in year 10, you might come back to the court and say, when we drafted this, we weren't really thinking about retirement, but now I'm facing retirement and I know my income is going to be this and I can't support the award. That will also constitute a change of um, circumstance. So illness, um, profound illness, I should say, uh, decreasing a party's earning capacity, other factors decreasing earning capacity. It could be the economy. Also, I've had cases where uh, people who have very specific careers find themselves unable to work in their careers and earn what they were earning at the time of the divorce. And you can come to court and say, um, I'm no longer earning what I was because of factors beyond my control. And then you have to prove that. Uh, and the court will award a spousal support award downward. I have seen spousal support awards um, lengthened and increased. So it is possible to modify a spousal support for a longer period of time and for a greater amount. But those both require, a pretty significant showing of change of circumstance. Um, in terms of, so uh, I tell my clients that if you're afraid, if it's going to be a longer amount of spousal support, if you can come up with um, uh, a lump sum, right? You just pay the lump sum. Uh, that once it's paid, you can't come back and modify it, right? It's just paid, it's done. So um, I sometimes will advise people in appropriate economic circumstance to pay a lump sum um, award. And then finally, I'm just saying this, it should be obvious. Um, you cannot unilaterally decide to pay less. If the other party says, okay, I know you're having a bad time right now, and I'll agree to reduce spousal support, that needs to be in writing. It doesn't necessarily need to be filed with the court, but the best practice is then to modify the spousal support judgment to reflect the new understanding. If the parties don't do that, you run the risk of, oh, I never said that he could reduce, and then you're in contempt land to enforce it. So the reduction requires a signed court order, and that could be either through a hearing or through an agreement by the parties and a stipulated order that the amount of spouse support will be reduced or increased. And then the last thing I want to talk about, but I don't have a slide for it, but it's important, is how do you enforce a spousal support award? Husband, uh, couple divorces, and the court orders wife to pay husband $2,000 a month, and wife pays for a year, and then she doesn't pay in years two, three, four. out of four. So she only paid for 1 year. How does a husband enforce wife to pay? And there is really only one. Actually, that's not true. Uh, Husband has a monthly judgment against wife, and with that judgment, he can garnish her wages, he can seize her assets, he can seize her bank accounts to bring the spouse support award current. Uh, but he can only do that if there's arrearage because the amount due is only what is ordered for each month, right? So you cannot prospectively um, like seize a bank account to get your spouse support in the future. But if there's a arrearage, right, if there's money owing, then you can seize a bank account to collect. The other, so there are collection vehicles available to collect on a spouse support award. The other way to collect is by filing a contempt action against the non-paying spouse or ex-spouse. And that includes financial penalties, and the statute provides for jail time under some circumstance. I have never seen that. Uh, but the statute provides that for every day after the judgment is filed, the spouse may pay um, up to $500 a day in penalties, and usually that's an incentive, plus attorney fees and maybe some other penalties are available. So the two ways to enforce a spouse support award are through collection procedures authorized by statute and which an attorney can utilize, and a party has to go to court to get a signature on, or a separate contempt action against the non-paying spouse. All right, finally, conclusions. So let me wrap up here and summarize. There are three types of spouse supports awards: transitional, maintenance, and compensatory. Duration is a function of the length of the marriage, right? So the longer you're married, the longer the spouse support award will be. On the short end, uh, uh, spouse is unlikely to get spouse support in a year or 2 year marriage, in my experience. In a long marriage, 15, 20, 25 years, once the duration starts approaching um, that length of time, uh, the parties may have the option to collect indefinite support. The amount of support is a function of the percentage difference between the two incomes and the dollar amount, right? So the percentage, like I said, may fluctuate 10, 15%, 30, 35%. So, um, and then the dollar amount will be, what is the actual, numbers that the court is looking at. Spouse support is not a right. It's something that you ask the court to award you, and the court will or should award it once you've proved the factors and the criteria um, that the statute lays out. And then if you were seeking spousal support, you need to look at the criteria in the statute to convince the court to award you spousal support. So take a look at the statutes, figure out how you're going to address each of the criteria objectively, either through objective evidence or through an expert who can come in and give an opinion. And then if you're trying to defeat a claim for spousal support, closely examine the facts to show that both parties' income is correct and that the claimant spouse has actually made his or her case, or what the recipient's potential income is. And those will help you either defeat the claim or reduce the claim. So thank you for watching, and it's always a treat to do these for people. And again, if you have questions, please take my information and shoot me an email or give me a call. If you want to give me a like on Meetup or any other menus, that would be appreciated too. And I think that is just about it for tonight. Thank you.